Before we begin, thank you to the dozens of people who emailed me about this all throughout the night, but maybe check my Twitter or something first just to make sure I do know about a thing before you send me an email that starts with, "Hey, you probably heard about this, but..." and then proceeds to tell me about the thing I already knew about. Your tip-offs are appreciated all the same, as is your passion for coverage of the games industry, and people have been very passionate about Activision and a certain patent that it filed. In short, the patent pertains to using in-game matchmaking to try and get customers to spend more money on microtransactions, essentially preying on customers at optimal times in an effort to make more dosh. Interestingly enough, it ties in with something I've been researching for an episode of the Gymquisition, an episode that I've actually bumped up to this Monday. That research is actually wholly independent of this recent Activision kerfuffle, but it's thematically somewhat similar, so it's rather apropos that Activision did an Activision at just the right time. However, before we begin, let's temper any potential outrage by taking both a step back and a more chilled out look at what we're actually dealing with here. We are dealing with a patent. And a patent is just that, a patent. On its own, it's patently meaningless. Anyone can throw up a patent for something. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's a thing that will ever come to pass. And Activision has stated that it's never used this stuff in any of its games. Of course, that's a publisher speaking. You trust a publisher as far as you can throw them. But we should get all the facts on the table before we set light to our pitchforks. I realise that you actually have torches as a separate source of fire and the pitchforks remain unburned. Don't set fire to pitchforks. You'd absolutely fuck their structural integrity. Basically what I'm saying is it's not yet the time to panic. The patent is disgusting, it's sleazy, and it absolutely deserves to be criticised because just having the idea is enough to make one vomit. I mean, once we go through some of the stuff in this patent, just try and imagine the kind of dirtbag who has ideas like this. Personally, I'm going with an anthropomorphised literal bag of dirt wearing a suit and tie. And while I said this is only a patent and doesn't necessarily mean something's happening, it's nonetheless very good for shedding light on the motives, on the desires of the executives in charge of Activision. No, this is not proof that something wicked this way comes, but it's evidence that someone wicked comes every time they think about dollar bills. Fuck, that was a really good one. So the patent, brought to us by Activision Publishing Incorporated, titled A System and Method for Driving Microtransactions in Multiplayer Video Games. It's enough to make you retch already, isn't it? A system and method is provided that drives microtransactions in multiplayer video games. They spell it as two words. It's one word. It's only ever been one word. The system may include a microtransaction, arrange matches to influence game-related... But that's the sentence. The system may include a microtransaction, arrange matches to influence game-related purchases. Okay? I mean, I know the header for this is abstract, but I didn't have to take it fucking literally. Anyway, for instance, the system may match a more expert/marquee player with a junior player to encourage the junior player to make game-related purchases of items possessed/used by the marquee player. A junior player may wish to emulate the marquee player by obtaining weapons or other items used by the marquee player. You can imagine a scenario that this describes, you know. You're playing an online multiplayer match and someone kicks your ass with some awesome weapon and then you're told, hey, do you want that awesome weapon that kicked your ass? Here it is. Stump up the green. Basically, this goes back to an argument I've talked about long ago with microtransactions, the difference between the haves and the have-nots. That's one of the many reasons why the it's just cosmetic argument never flew with me, because cosmetic or not, it's all manipulation. It's all showing someone else with cool stuff and making someone else think, I don't have cool stuff, I need to buy cool stuff. That's the funny thing about this patent. It patents a very specific method of audience manipulation, but the audience has been manipulated already. The literal bags of dirt wearing their suits and ties have been manipulating us for years. That is, of course, not to say that the stuff being read out right now isn't disgusting, because, well, obviously it is. Some of the stuff written in this patent, which I'll link in the description, is gibberish. I mean, I'm sure it means something to somebody, but it just reads like a garbled mess to me. Identifying by the host computer an in-game item that is of potential interest to a first player but not yet possessed by the first player for gameplay in a multiplayer game wherein the in-game item is determined to be of potential interest to the first player based on at least one of a preference of the first player in a profile associated with the first player in the multiplayer game and a utility of the in-game item to a particular level of the multiplayer game. What? Fucking what? To do our best to simplify what they're actually talking about, I'll just do my fucking best. Basically what they want to do is work out what items in a game are of interest to you, and then using a multiplayer game's matchmaking system to put you in with players that already have that item to make it all the more tantalizing. For example, Activision's patented process may decide that you're interested in certain styles of hat for a character. The process then determines the sort of hat you really want to buy, then puts you in a match with someone wearing that hat. The obvious desired end game there is that the player sees the hat, says, "That's a cool ass hat, that's exactly the type of hat I'd like to wear in my game," and then, bestest of best cases for Activision, the player who saw the hat and really wanted the hat immediately runs off to purchase the hat. The idea of matching newcomer players with more experienced players gives off the impression, potentially the illusion, that the in-game items the veteran player has are more effective, because that person is more skilled, of course. And to make things extra sinister, once the newcomer purchases said items, Activision's little fuckhole system begins to work out how best to use that player with their new items to sell the items to newer players. It's like some sort of fucked up pyramid scheme where the people being manipulated to sell stuff don't even know they're selling stuff. All while one gigantic pile of shit sits atop the pyramid being the only one making any money. Ideally, in a multiplayer game, people want to be matched according to their skill level. High-level players should be playing with high-level players, low-level players should be playing with low-level players, and Jim Sterling should be playing with Dark Side Phil, probably. At its most concise, what Activision has patented is Microtransaction-Based Matchmaking. That's about the best way of describing it. Players being put in matches together not based on how well they might work together in a match, but how well they might unwittingly work together to make Activision more scratch. It's despicable, it's grotesque, but it is, at its heart, fully and wholly representative of the AAA video game industry today. We saw this with Star Wars Battlefront 2 recently in the beta. Yeah, Electronic Arts scaled back some of that bullshit because the internet backdraft was just so huge it couldn't be ignored, but you can't look at what they showed us in the beta and not call it a microtransaction-based game, where character progression and success is all determined by fucking loot boxes. I'm at a point in Shadow of War now where I'm starting to feel the pinch as well, where there's a constant demand for fresh orcs and the quickest and dirtiest way to get them is with the loot box system. Not to mention the snake-like way in which the game tries to coax you toward the marketplace by flashing it up on the main menu, putting little adverts there, and occasionally rewarding you with boxes that you can only open in the marketplace. This patent may be very revealing and telling of motivations, but ultimately it's a reflection of the modern state of so-called AAA gaming. It's not about creating a rewarding experience anymore, not for a lot of these games. It's about how much can we bilk out of someone who's already given us money. The odds are steadily increasing that every time you buy a $60 game now, you are, in effect, paying $60 to be fucked with by a company, to have your head played around with so you can give them even more. Activision says its microtransaction-based matchmaking patent has not been put into any of its games yet. But yet's the operative word, isn't it? And who knows how many assholes are sitting there right now dreaming up new ways to trick you, to fuck with you, to play with your head, to treat you like a stupid fucking wanker. And you'll still be paying at least $60 for the privilege of being treated like a stupid fucking wanker. And of course, with the prevalence of season passes and silver and gold editions, it's highly likely you're paying way more than $60 to be treated like a stupid fucking wanker. Maybe $89, maybe $99, maybe $150. Maybe you bought the physical collector's edition for $200 and whatever. The ticket price you paid doesn't really matter. In the eyes of Activision and companies like it, you're all gigantic udders ripe for the milking. Moo.